When I talked about sleep, I didn't realize how important sleep really is. And so when I'm working with more sales professionals now every single day, that is the first thing that we'll focus on. And we're not spending 2 weeks on it. It's just a matter of realizing that people that come and hire us at online exercise coaching, they are 110% maxed out in their own capacity. They've got high stress at work because they're in a sales position, which is very, very demanding. They've got high stress at home. There's other demands that are going on outside of that. And then they're trying to add this additional stressor and additional headspace into fitness and their health. That's really, really difficult.
Welcome back to another episode of the Sales Gravy Podcast. Back with me all the way from Canada, riding down here on his motorcycle just to get some cool socks, is Josh Hulsebosch. And you'll probably remember him from an earlier podcast that we did around health. And Josh has created some courses on Sales Gravy University that are crazy popular. We've also created a learning path that you can get with your All Access Pass that allows you to go through a whole series of courses that he created around exercise and fitness and wellness to make you a better salesperson. And those are also super popular. I'm incredible. We just rolled that thing out a couple of weeks ago, how many people have enrolled in that particular learning path. And I've been getting comments, like I'm going places. I was in Washington, D.C. just 2 weeks ago, and I walked into a room and people were talking about Josh and Josh's courses and the podcast, and how it had created some awareness in them of things that they needed to do to change. So today in this podcast, we're going to be focusing more on health and wellness. I've got some pretty specific questions to ask Josh. We'll get a little bit more granular. But what I want you to do is I want you to go check out Sales Gravy University and go check out Josh's courses. And you can go to learn.salesgravy.com, learn.salesgravy.com to check out these courses. And by the way, you can get your very first course for free if you've never taken a course before by using the code FREECOURSE. And I highly recommend, after you listen to this podcast or watch this podcast, pick up one of Josh's courses because you won't go wrong with it. All right, Josh. So you rode your motorcycle down this time. Like the last time you hijacked me on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So you just crashed our party. You show up at our front steps. You've been riding all the way down for Canada. You made some stupid excuse about some belt or chain being broken on your motorcycle, and you said, I got to hang out in Thompson, Georgia for a few days, and so while I'm here, why don't we do a podcast and shoot some more videos?
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how that works, but the first question I have for you is what kind of crazy are you to get on a motorcycle and ride it from Toronto to Georgia?
Well, it's pretty much still your winter in Toronto. So I had to get on my igloo. And when I heard Jeb Blount had availability in his schedule, because you're a busy guy, I was like, okay, jump on the motorcycle, I'm there. And also these socks, the rumor has it, now this is unconfirmed, but the rumor has it that if you're doing a presentation in these socks, it gives you at least 25% more confidence. That's the rumor. I don't know who started it, but that's why I'm here.
Pretty good. You want to hold your sock up for the camera so everybody can see it? So Sales Gravy socks, yeah.
You can't go wrong with these.
I'm just curious because I don't ride motorcycles, and my wife would kill me if I got on a motorcycle. And I love my wife, and so I don't want to be killed.
Sure.
How do you keep yourself entertained? Like you're driving, you're on your motorcycle, you're on the interstate or what have you. Are you listening to music or podcasts? Or how do you keep yourself from like just completely zoning out and killing yourself?
Yeah. For sure. The part of you potentially could kill yourself really keeps you focused, but not only that it's almost like exercise in the sense of it's forced meditation. So I'll have my earplugs in. Sure, I'll be listening to some music or something like that, but you really have to stay in the present moment. And there's very few times in my life and in my day where I'm actually forced in that position because like you were saying, like there's so much stuff going on. You have to be aware of what's happening ahead of you 10 seconds. You have to be aware of what's behind you and what they're doing as well, making sure that you're watching this chessboard that's happening on the road, and that keeps you very engaged. So I'll find myself during that time when I'm watching traffic is I'm actually working on my breathing. And it just allows me, again, to stay in that present moment. It's the same thing as when we're talking about exercise. So if we're talking about like bicep curls or something like that, there's studies that show that if you're focusing on the muscle that you're working on, you actually can get up to 30% more activation from that. So it's really, really important to be staying in the moment and saying, okay, what muscle am I activating and being there? So I love it because of the meditative nature of it all.
some more questions about motorcycles. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that there's people in the audience who do this all the time that think I'm a moron for asking these questions. When you're in a big city, like I was in Washington D.C. a few weeks ago, and I'm just trying to navigate traffic in my car. Do you go around the big cities or you go through them? I mean, downtown Atlanta during rush hour on a motorcycle, I can't even imagine. Like, how do you navigate that? Because you've got these people in trucks, and they're on their phones and they're texting each other and they're swerving over lanes, and you're on a little tiny bike. Like, what's the process for getting through the cities without getting crushed?
Yeah. Yeah. So when I say I'm from Toronto, Canada, I'm not like another Canadian who's like, hey, you probably don't know where the city I'm from. Oh no, I am downtown Toronto, Canada. I'm right by, you Canadians, you'll know, like Lakeshore in Toronto. That's where I'm at. So I'm right there in the heart of it. So this is one of the most congested cities within, I'll say maybe the world, definitely in Canada for sure. So I'm in that at all times. Like when I'm wearing, I used to wear a wearable by Whoop, but it would register if I'm doing a workout. And every time I jumped off the motorcycle, it asked me, what workout did you do? Because the stressors, not that I was stressed, but the stressors was I was like a 3 out of 3 or 2 out of 3 when I was going through there. So there's a few things that you want to be paying attention to. First one is you're just being hyper aware. You're taking your time. There is no zipping around cars. Guys on motorcycles, please don't do that. That's just a death sentence right there. You're very much taking your time. And the second part is you're not there to educate anybody. If someone cuts you off, just assume that they didn't mean to do it and ease off on it, because if you lay on that horn, you don't see the other guy that they were zooming from, you've lost control of the motorcycle. So you want to very much be very forgiving and not trying to correct people when you're doing that. That would be the recommendations I say.
I think it's a major mental game.
It is.
I'm a hyper competitive human being, and I think that most salespeople are. Like if you look at like the top salespeople, competitiveness goes at the top of the rung. So if you're super competitive, like you want to win all the time, and we love that because hyper competitive people, like when they get knocked down, they're like, I'm going to get back up and I'm going to go harder. Like yeah. I'm going to do it again. And I'm sure you see that in the gym. Someone has a bad day in the gym, they come in the next day and like, I'm going to hit it hard. Yeah. Competitors do that. And that's a really hard thing in traffic, especially in today's world with people as volatile as they are and so many salespeople on the road, because in person is back in a big way. It's super easy. And I love the way you said that we're not educating the other person. It's so easy to get in a situation where someone makes you mad, and then you get into that deal where you're right up on them and they're right up on you, and you're like cruising through traffic, or you won't let them in. And I recognized in myself, because I drive so much back and forth to the airport, that I was doing that. This was back in the fall, but I recognized that somebody cut me off, and I'm speeding up, and I'm not being like reckless or mean or anything, but I'm like, no, you're not going to get in front of me. This is my space. And I'm like, this is a really good way to die.
Yeah.
Like you got to learn how to let stuff go that doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. And I do think there's some lesson in that, being able to like just breathe. It's okay. They don't know who you are. You don't know who they are. It would be a whole lot better to get where you're going in one piece than to have some catastrophic accident that changes your entire life forever because you were being super competitive.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I can't agree more on that one. So anytime you're in that position, it is very much, there is a process that comes to it, because automatically, as competitive yourself or myself would be, like I just want to respond. Everything in me wants to respond, because when you get caught off by a motorcycle, it's a little different than a car in the sense of, oh, that absolute loser, I won't swear, but that absolute loser, I can't imagine like he's doing that. For me, it's that person almost killed me. Like had I not seen that, had I hit the brake, I would have died in that situation, and I know they would have just run off. So it takes a little bit extra, especially when on a motorcycle, to try to chill, because it is life and death in that situation.
Mm-hmm. The only thing that I can relate it to is traveling with a horse trailer behind you that's full of living, breathing horses that are in your care, and you're in downtown Atlanta and you're trying to get through it, and people are cutting you off, and like if you slam the brakes on, all those horses are going to get slammed the brakes on too, because they don't have seatbelts on, and you have to be hyper aware. But that's the place where if I were to get out of a truck driving a horse trailer, having gone downtown, the app would ask me what exercise I went into, because I can be completely stressed out. Well, like I said, people have been commenting. So people all over who listen to this podcast have been telling me that they enjoyed our time together. People who are on SGU enjoyed that. I had a rep send me a note and said, I'm just so impressed that Sales Gravy is focusing on something like fitness.
That's great.
And I that was cool because it was when we took we rolled the dice and said
did,
we're
yeah.
gonna put content on Sales Gravy University around health and fitness, and so far everything's been super positive. So let's get a little bit granular. In your videos, and one of the things that Josh does during his training videos is he actually takes these exercises, each exercise, and breaks them down. So you get 15 seconds of this and you'll move to the next one. You talk about proud posture.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the proud posture is something that I've been trying to keep in my head when I'm working out.
Yeah.
Because I think that the one thing that I do a poor job of is my posture. I hunch over. I know that I do. I see pictures of myself doing that. I'm trying to remind myself to, like, even when I'm sitting in a chair, like when I start scooting forward.
Yeah.
I don't know why I do that. Like, I'll be sitting there just like this, and then 10 minutes later, I'm doing this. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I scoot back up, try to get my back straight, try to get proud posture in. But I'm not always sure that like I'm even doing it right. Like, do I look like a moron? Like, am I not doing this?
Yeah.
And I recognize it when you're working out, this concept. Can you walk us through this concept called proud posture?
Yeah.
And why that is so fundamental? Because it's the one, like, I watch your theme. That was the one thing that like stuck out to me more than even the exercises was this concept of proud posture.
Yeah, so there's a few different reasons why we focus on proud posture as a fitness coach. So if I'm training someone, every single exercise that we do utilizes what we call as a proud posture. So being in a particular ready state that allows us to move weights in a particular fashion that's really safe for us. So that's the primary focus on that, and we'll get a little bit more into that. When we're talking about how we get into the proud posture, even if we're talking about sales, I'll go through the steps a little bit here. So a lot of people, when they're thinking, well, I got to correct my posture, the first thing they're going to be thinking about is they're going to be drawing the shoulders back. So that's the instant one. But for us, like, this doesn't look very natural if I'm like pulling this back. What you actually want to be focusing on, there's two different things that you want to be aware of, maybe three. Is the first one is, instead of drawing the shoulder blades back, I actually want you to draw the shoulders down. So it's going to be in this position here. A lot of sales professionals, a lot of people that I've worked with, they talk about, hey, I got a lot of tightness within this. This is our trap right here. I got a lot of tightness going on here. And that's because we're working. And if there's ever a stressor that's going on, we might get that activation. So the nice thing about that, not only do we have that nice proud posture, but it helps engage the lat, which forces the trap to relax a little bit more. So that's the first thing. And it allows us not to look weird because we're like bringing the shoulder blades back. That's step one. Step two is what we actually want to be focusing on is this thoracic. So this is your thoracic cavity right here. So it's going to be drawing your chest out. So you're actually going to activate the muscles within your back, pull that down, and you're going to draw that chest out.
Shoulders down. Because I do think that's where I look stupid, because I do like that. Like, I'm sitting in an airplane, I'm going like this, and I think I look weird.
Well, and it's just because we're not used to it. Like, it's, again,
it feels better. Like, when I do it, I feel, I don't know, more confident. It makes my back feel better. But I think that's what I'm doing. I think I'm drawing my shoulders up, because that felt a lot better when you said you move the center part of the thoracic cavity out, but you put your shoulders down. Yeah. It actually feels good. Like, it actually feels, it makes me tingle a little bit.
That's it. It's like where we're holding the tension. So it's the reverse. And then if we're talking about tension, I could go on the full podcast about the proud posture. But if you're thinking about, okay, what are we doing on a daily basis? Okay, we're typing on the laptop, we're driving, we're doing our texting. Oh, see what's happening with my posture here. What's tightening up? So I'm just going to name a few muscles. So we got our pec minor here. That's really, really tight. So we need to be loosening that. Again, that thoracic cavity, as everything is caved in, so we need to be opening it up. So let's loosen up that pec minor. Okay, cool. And that's drawing the shoulders down. Okay, I'm going to get this chest out, so that's opening up thoracic cavity. What's happening is I actually can breathe. I can enunciate better. My tonality is different. Well, in the sales profession, that's huge. And it doesn't matter if I'm on the phone call or if I'm going to be web presence or I'm actually standing and talking to an individual. People are going to pick up on that tonality, and they're definitely going to pick it up whenever we're in a position where it's like you and I. So I'm shaking your hand.
Yeah, I read that like one of the problems with people who hunch over, which I'm one of those people, is that you tend to be a shallow breather. Like, yes, you're breathing out of your mouth and you breathe out of here. And when you move up, when you get your posture right, you begin to breathe more deeply from here. Yeah.
Yes.
And of course, I learned in high school from chorus, and I learned in college and speech class that you want to breathe from your diaphragm, but I actually never really figured out how to do that. So you're exactly right. It does. It sort of it makes you project better.
Yes.
Let's just think about proud posture from a day, going through your daily world. Since I've watched your videos, the thing I've tried to be aware of is how am I sitting, and that's great when I'm aware of it. But I've been a hunched over human being for my entire life, and I'm struggling with how do I change that habit. And I was online. Is there like a harness that I can get myself that will push me back? But something that other than making myself go, how are you sitting in this seat? How are you sitting in this chair? How often I find myself scooted down. But the only thing I've realized is that actually makes me tireder. It wears me out when I'm sitting like that, even though initially it feels more comfortable. But becoming aware of it, I'm realizing that actually is taking energy away from me.
Yeah.
But I'll sit here like this, and then I'll get into my normal routine. I'm just talking with people. Like I'm talking, and I'll be like this. And we did this earlier. Tim's over here on the other side of the camera, but we did this earlier. We were sitting there talking about the 4 P's of podcasting, and pretty soon here I am like this, and I'm like, getting back to this place. Yeah. What is your advice for an old dog that needs to learn a new trick?
Yeah. So we talked about loosening things up. We talked about loosening the pec minor. We're talking about that thoracic cavity being opened as well. We talked about the activation. The other component of this is actually strengthening the muscles. So the back of us here, that's your posterior anterior. This is our posterior, so the back. You really want to be focusing on actually getting that activation. And this is why I love resistance bands, just if you are traveling, because you get that back activation. When I say back activation, I'm talking about our traditional back rows, because what does that do? The reverse, so these muscles are super tight. Let's loosen these muscles up, and let's strengthen the muscles that are actually going to help us get into this proud posture as we talked about. So we're talking about the back rows, we're talking about lat pull downs, things like that. That's for the upper body. So to help to get into I'm going to hold into this position. We want to be strengthening those muscles. That's for the upper body. Lower body wise, what we really want to be focusing on is the hip flexors. So you can see how we're sitting right now. Our hips, they're very tight. And we want to be loosening up our hip flexors, because typically if our hips are out of alignment, that causes all kinds of issues for our lower back. So the next thing that you really need to be doing for that proud posture is actually loosening up those hip flexors. I know in the course we've got some stretches for that one, but it is simply, if you look up hip flexor stretch, any of those, make sure you keep it dynamic, because we're dynamic people. We don't need a static hold, but doing that dynamically will loosen that up, and that allows for us to be able to hold this position and allow for that hips to be back into alignment.
You still hadn't answered my question.
Okay, sorry.
How do I make myself do this consistently? Because as soon as I lose conscious awareness, because my back, if you were to look at I saw my back in a t-shirt the other day ago in a gym, and I was like, I'm starting to build back muscles. Yesterday when I went into the gym, the very first thing I did dumbbell rolls, but I was doing dumbbell rolls, and I immediately went to the lat machine. Yeah. And I'm doing what you taught me. I asked you last time if there was one exercise you could do, what would it be? And you said squats. I never miss my squats. I'm doing squats all the time. I even I was at the airport, and I hadn't worked out that day, so I had my suitcase, which weighs about 50 pounds, and I was doing squats in my suitcase. Nice. I know I looked weird in the airport. Don't judge the dude that's doing curls with the exercise bands in his seat on the airplane. I'm worried that I work at it when I'm working out, and I recognize I still have work to do on form. Yeah, right? I get that, but I'm better. Yeah, but I see it. I want to do it, and I am more aware of it, and I'm trying to self-correct. What else can I do to make sure that when I'm sitting at my desk, or I'm sitting in a meeting, or I'm sitting in a chair anywhere, which I try not to sit down as much as possible, what I do, that I'm not slouching and hunching over?
Sure. So I'll give you a short answer and a long answer. The long answer is it's all about habit. So again, if we're talking about, okay, let's get to that homeostasis, where we're like, okay, this is how we sit. It's going to take some time and practice, because we're trying to rewrite so much habit that we have going on there. So that's your long answer. It's like, okay, we have to continue working on being continually aware. Like most of us don't walk even properly, so we have to address that. That's the first one. To answer your question quickly, one of the things I found that has really worked for myself, has helped me out a lot, is if you are, so let's say we're against a wall, you bring your feet out about 2 feet distance away from you. So we bring both our feet out. I'm going to have my head, my shoulders, and my hips off of, on the wall. Now I'm going to bring the hips off of the wall. Now I've got my head and my shoulders. I'm going to put the chin up. I'm going to look up, and then I'm going to bring the chest in that nice proud posture off of the wall. So the only thing that is on the wall right now is your head. Okay, so we're on this nice little angle there. I want you to put a timer on for 2 minutes, 1 minute, maybe 2 minutes. That's the primary goal. So what's happening here is we're activating these muscles right here. And what you're going to have once after 2 minutes is up, you walk away from the wall, that's going to pull your head back. And what happens is the whole body follows suit with that. So if my head is back, the whole body is going to be upright. And because these muscles are activating here and encouraging that, that's going to help us hold into this position. It's one of those I would consider as a hack. Versus if everything is tight, like I'm just playing tug of war the whole time to get into this position, versus, okay, now we've done that, so that's going to open things up. That would be something that I found has worked for me on the short run.
Okay. I'm going to give that a shot, and I'm going to continue to be aware. On modern day fitness watches,
Yes.
like that I don't have one, and I'm thinking about getting one because I've gotten to the point now where I'm thinking, okay, well, I need to start measuring things. Can you set those watches so that they give you like a buzz on a certain interval to remind you of something? Like, can you set it so that, the buzz would be, we're going to be focusing on this particular habit, proud posture. And so every few, minutes or so, or every 5 minutes, you get a buzz, and that's the reminder that I'm going to check my posture. Can you set them? I don't know anything about them.
That's totally fair. I have never tried these, so I can't say, hey, this is what's going to work for you. It's amazing. If we're talking about wearables, yes, there is alerts. That's going to give you indication of, hey, you should be moving or walking. I know there's that. When you're talking about for proud posture, there's two things. I'm going to tell you about the app, and then I'm going to talk about what we used to do back in college, okay? The app-wise, there are things that you can wear, like you actually stick here, and then if you're hunching, it's going to remind you with a little buzz. So that's kind of a reminder there. Okay. So there are applications for that in the sense of like hardware that you can buy. I don't have any experience with it, so I can't recommend anything. What I can recommend that has helped me out the most, and actually you asking this question has kind of jogged my memory. So the first ever place I used to work for, they would work with NHL players and things like that. And one of it was that proud posture. So they would get, that skin tape, the body tape. Mm-hmm. So they would actually get body tape, and they would tape us up into that proud posture. So you do a strip down your lats here. So that's as simple as that.
You come over from the top down?
It's going to be actually on the back there. So you're going to actually have the tape on the back. And anytime you fall out of position, you're going to feel the tightness of that tape, reminding you, oh, hey, we have to get back into position. So I always just did the 2 strips. And I do this from the shoulder blades here down. Is almost like a nice little V to the spine. It doesn't have to go down there.
So the shoulder blades down is a V.
Yeah.
That's a great idea, because I use fitness tape on my arms when I play golf, or especially sometimes I get tennis elbow and drop that in there, and it does wonders.
So when I did that, I remember the first time my coach taping me up, it was incredible how hard it was to maintain that tape. So if you were saying it's because I know you're a big golfer or something like that, but if you're doing any of those walks, or you're taking a walk, or even golfing, that would be a perfect time to try it out, because you'd be amazed on how often you're feeling that tape. Like, oh, wow, okay, oh, that's a good reminder. So that's something you can try.
Well, it's good in golf too, because if you hunch over in golf, it changes your swing as well. And if you've got that habit, you're having the same problem.
Yeah.
Let's shift to planks.
Okay.
So tell me about the health benefits of planks, mm-hmm. and how you should work that into your workout. Because I struggle with it a little bit because I don't like them, and I like what I do. I'm just gonna tell you what I do now is, like, if I have a sit-up day where I'm gonna do lots of ab work, I do just regular sit-ups, just like you taught, where I don't go all the way to the ground. I maintain the tension on the abs. I come up. And they're not really crunches. They're just sit-ups. I'll do some on the big ball because it's easier on my back to do it that way, but I'll switch off of those, and then I do planks, and I count 1 second of a plank like one sit-up, like in my brain. That's how I do. So if I do 20 seconds, that's 20 sit-ups. And I don't know if it's equivalent or not. But I just end up not doing as many planks as I probably should do. And I just I want to get your opinion on that, because I it's something I think people think about sometimes. Like, how do they fit? Where do they fit? What's the health benefit of planks? What does a plank do you versus a regular sit-up or a crunch? How does it fit into core exercises?
Yeah, great question. So the plank is the most important ab exercise that you can do.
Well, thanks.
So
No.
I just hate to break it for those who don't like planks. And
It's the most important.
They are the most important core exercise that you can do, bar none. And if you're wanting to do,
I'm going to stop you for a second. So Tim's over here. You can't see Tim, but he's smiling right now. So Tim, the last time he's here, I'm like, if you could only do one exercise a day? I'm like, what exercise would it be? And he goes, squats. I'm like, crap. Like, nobody likes squats. And so now he's telling me like the most important ab exercise is a plank. So now I've got squats and planks, both things that I don't like.
Oh, you can mix them up as well as and do complete walkouts, and I have got a video on that. Yeah, so with the plank, very, very important, and the reason I say that is it challenges the core the only way that the core is designed to be utilized, which is stabilization. So when we're standing up, if you think about it, how am I not falling over? Of course, there's other muscles in play, but it's our core that is engaged. Talking about exercise, anytime we're doing chest press, squats that you love so much, any of those exercises, for us not to fold in half and just become a rag doll, the core has to be engaged. So we need to challenge the core in the way that is being challenged on every single day through our workouts and all that. The plank does that because it's an isometric hold, and that's the reason why it's so important. And that's just in the sense of for the core. So when we're talking about sit-ups, it is very much a vanity muscle, or I should say vanity exercise, because outside of me getting out of my bed, I don't do a sit-up for the rest of my day, right? Versus for the core, of course, I'm walking around where you walked into these chairs, anything like that. I'm keeping myself upright with that proud posture. Well, the core is being engaged there. That's number one. Number two is when we're in the plank position, that is the perfect time to actually practice that when we're talking about that proud posture. So that would be like the chest press. So it's like, okay, am I drawing the shoulders down? Am I drawing the sternum out? Do I have myself fully engaged? Do I got that glute activation when I'm in that plank position? So it is an incredible test of our proper proud posture under tension, working on a core exercise. So that's the reason why is like, unfortunately, the plank is the very best. Side planks is another favorite that I recommend for a lot of people because we get to work those planks. Side plank is instead of us being on the mat in this position, I'm actually on the side. So I have my elbow on the mat, supporting myself with the forearm, keeping the chest open, the shoulders pointing to the ceiling, and I've got my whole body straight, and I've got my feet either stacked or staggered.
Okay.
So
but you've got your torso off the.
Exactly, do.
Okay, so if you were to add to that, you could take one of your legs and do a leg lift. So you could do a hip flexor. Is that right?
That would be your hip.
Okay.
So you're working.
Okay, I could do that. So let's talk about plank exercises.
Sure. Yeah.
So give me a routine with planks that works. And I do, like, when I do 500 push-ups, I'm doing like a SEAL routine. I'm doing, I'm doing push-ups. Like, I'll do 10 push-ups, count 10, do 10 push-ups, count 10, do 10 push-ups, count 10. You do that for a minute, it'll max you out, then take a break, and then come back and do it again.
Yeah.
And I do a ton of sit-ups. Although I found that the sit-ups help me, especially with golf. Like, they really help me with, and they help me with squats. So I feel like I'm doing squats better that way. But if I'm gonna quit doing push-ups and start doing planks, like full-time planks,
right?
Walk me through a good repetition routine for me.
Right. Next time we do this podcast, we have to have the lighting and the videos where I can do some demonstration, because I'd love to do some demonstrations here. I really think just knowing yourself on how you want to get as much done as possible in the shortest amount of time, which is really efficient. I appreciate that about you. The very best exercise I can think about is actually doing walkouts and then bring yourself back into a squat. So I'm going to try to verbally explain this, and then I might send you a clip so you can show the viewers as well. But it is where you're coming from a standing position here. Let's go with wide feet. You're going to come down, find that stretch in the hamstrings as you're touching the floor. Your knees can be bent. I want you to walk out now until you're into a plank position. Again, feet are wide, and I'm in that perfect push-up position.
You're going to be in the push-up
I'm
position.
going to be in the push-up position. The push-up is additional. If you want to add a push-up to this sweetness, that's great. And then from here, because range of motion is so vitally important for ourselves, especially as we age, but any age is so important. I want you then now, because we're working our shoulders, we're working our chest, we're going to walk back. But as we're walking back, we're bending our knees so we end up in what's called a sumo squat. So that's going to be where your squats are super wide. So it allows us to get into that position. So you're going to be in a seated position because you're walking back. And I want you from that position, try to, again, proud posture, drawing the shoulders down, chest out. You're going to find everything that is tight about yourself. Drive through the heels and go into a full squat. And then do that again. And do that for 10 minutes, no joke. And man, the amazing amount of hamstring stretch, the amazing amount of hip stretch that you're going to get that plank activation, the push-ups if you want to add it, and the squats.
How long do you stay in the plank?
I would stay in for a matter of a few seconds because your core is engaged the whole time as you're walking out into that position. So if you want to count it as like maybe 2 sales gravies.
Kind of a slow burpee.
It is a slow burpee. It would, yeah, but without the jumping, because I don't recommend, like, for everyone, jumping is not always a good thing to do. So it is kind of a slow burpee.
I do burpees with a sumo because it puts less stress on the knees if you do that. So it's slow burpee. Now, if I was just doing straight planks, if I want to just do planks, I'm doing in between sets and I'm just going to do a plank. How long should you stay in the plank, and how many sets of planks is going to, like, if you want to like be weak and burned completely out, like what would you do?
So I would always aim for the maximum I have seen with my clients that's useful is 2 minutes. That's typically
2 minutes
what we want to work towards.
What if I can do 20 seconds? And that's I probably could do 30 seconds if I really wanted to, but about 20 seconds, I'm shaking.
Well, and that's where we're working our way up to is the 2 minutes. But I also want to add is you can make this more challenging in the sense of plank. If you're saying, hey, I'm not really feeling, let's say the burn. Let's say you get to it.
I feel like a complete loser. 2 minutes? Good God. I mean, I thought I was doing good, but I remember a time when I could do 10 seconds and I thought that was good. Yeah. But I'm like 20 seconds, I'm counting it out and I'm going, okay, well, I'm going to do 20 seconds. That's 20 push-ups. I'm good. And I'll do like 5 sets of those. Yeah. But 2 minutes.
Okay. And you work your way up to it.
So how many 2-minute sets are you going to do?
For yourself, I would say 3 sets is enough. Like, you don't need to do more than that because I would say take some of that time and work.
If you did 10 sets, would you be better off?
I would say I'd want you to, so we have the whole trunk, which is our core. So I would want to say, hey, you know what? The plank is really good because we're working on the front abdominals. We still need to be working on those obliques.
So you put the obliques in there.
I would do the obliques as well. I would do some Supermans, which is, you're raising up your upper body and your lower half as you're lying down on the ground, and that's working your lower back as well. You want to strengthen that. And that was what we consider as like your full trunk. So if you're going to be doing 10 sets, I would say, hey, guys, do 3 sets of, our planks, 3 sets of our obliques, and you can transition between the two, 30 seconds, 30.
Total.
Yeah, and then you go into 3 sets for the lower back, and at least you've got that full coverage that's happening there. And the nice thing is if we're saying, hey, I want to really look good without the shirt on, if we're talking about that V, doing those obliques is going to help you get that nice V cut that we're looking for.
2 minutes.
Yeah. Watch this, though. The next time I come back for a podcast, you're like, listen, let me tell you.
I will be. I'll be like, I can do it for 5 minutes. Watch this. Competitive, right? But not in cars and motorcycles. No. Okay, so, God. I wish I hadn't asked that question. So, deadlifts.
Yes.
So, let's talk about real quickly, how important are deadlifts to fitness? Because everywhere I go, I hear, like, if you want one thing that will strengthen the entire body, it's a deadlift. Is that true? And are they important?
So it doesn't strengthen the whole part of your body, but it is vital because, when we're talking about the anterior and posterior chain, so anterior, that's the front of your body. Posterior, the one exercise that hits majority of the back, we're talking about posterior, so the legs as well as the upper back, is going to be your deadlifts. It is such an incredible exercise to do. Another reason why it's so incredible outside of, again, really practicing that proud posture is we get that glute activation. Majority of people actually don't know how to activate their glutes effectively or properly. So it's really important. If we're having a lot of lower back pain, and let's say you don't have an injury, typically what I've seen with my clients is we've got some serious tightness in the hip flexors, so loosen that up, and we don't have the engagement within our glutes because we sit on them all day. If we correct those two things, that lower back discomfort, that overworking of the erector spinae, those small muscles in the back typically disappear, and you have a lot easier of a time talking about that proud posture, a lot easier time keeping yourself upright. Why? Because you're using a big muscle to hold yourself up into that proud posture.
Now, I like deadlifts.
Yeah.
They're one of my favorite things to do, and I do this with my suitcase too. And that's really easy in the airport. You don't look too conspicuous. You just put the suitcase on the floor, you lean down, you pick it up, you put it back down, and that works pretty well. So this is back in February, I think, early February, or maybe it was January. I was in Dallas. I was in a great gym, and I was having a fantastic workout, 2-hour workout, and then I spent 30 minutes on a Peloton bike. Yep. When I got done, man, I was done. I was baked. But I was doing deadlifts, and they had one of those. It wasn't a Smith machine, but it was like a rack where you could put the bar in and like cut, I guess, clear how far it went down to the ground, which was nice. And I put too much weight on it because I tweaked my back when I was doing the deadlift, and I was in the mirror because I could see myself. So I was watching my form, and I think I may have had 245s on the bar. So what is that, 180 pounds or something like that. But it was too much. And I tweaked it enough so that for the next really month and a half, I just couldn't. I mean, I was doing deadlifts with very little weight. Like I would still do a deadlift, but I was not putting much weight on my back, and I could feel it. And when I say tweak my back, it didn't make me so that I couldn't sit down or walk, but I could feel it. It was right in this lower back part. So I just basically just went back to doing much lighter weights with deadlifts. So like I'll do a deadlift. I think you call them Romanian deadlifts, but I'll just hold I've got one of those dumbbells where I can adjust it, and I can put whatever weight I want them. So I'll sometimes do it at 35 or 45 pounds, and my suitcase probably weighs 40 pounds max. It's one of those little Toomies. And I do that, and I haven't had any problems since then. But I'm worried that it's not enough weight. Like I'm worried that I'm not actually working anything out, because I could do it 100 times and I would never get tired. So, but when I pick up more weight, I can feel it in my back. And the last thing I want to do at my age is get an injury that puts me behind. Now I'm stuck, so I can't work out. But I really do like deadlifts. I like the way that it makes the glutes feel. And I am following your advice. And if you watch his courses, you talk about how you need to put your mental focus on that part of your body, like when you're coming up. So I've been really working on the form based on your teaching, but I'm not sure it's enough weight. And I'm just wondering, does it matter? I mean, do you need to have a lot of weight there to work your glutes, or do you need to progressively go up? And you got to imagine with my dumbbells, I mean, as far as I can go up is 55 pounds. That's it. But I try to keep it around. I think I've been doing 35 pounds since I tweaked myself a little bit, and that's about it.
Yeah, I love this question, and this is something that I spend a good multiple sessions with clients just focusing on the deadlift, because there's a lot of mechanics with this one. So just as a review for people who are listening as well as watching, the few things that we're thinking about in the sense the form, and I might even demonstrate because I'm sure I've got a camera here. But the first thing is we really want to, and you were just talking about that, is focusing on the muscle that's being activated, because that allows us to make sure that that's being triggered. Again, that 30% more activation that occurs when you're focusing on that particular muscle, like that force meditation, which I absolutely love. That's number one for deadlifts. Number two is I want to drive the hips back. So when I'm going into a deadlift, as I'm dropping myself down, I don't want to think about lowering the weight, because that puts us into a position where we might lose the stack spine. You want to focus on how far can I drive that butt to touch the wall behind me. And I find that puts me in the perfect position, because it keeps all the weight into my center of balance, which is, you're going to be your ankles, as we're looking for. If that weight comes outside of the center of balance, what that does is it forces, there's these small muscles in the back here. This is your lower back. Funny name, erector spinae. That's the muscles that we're talking about. Very, very small in comparisons to the deadlift. So we don't want them being utilized more than the glutes. So when you raise those out of your center line, or that center of gravity that's ahead of you, you're going to be allowing them to activate more than they need to. So it's really important to make sure that you're focusing on getting that in line, the weight in line with that. So those are the few steps, and that's just to catch everyone up. What I think is occurring here is we're not following our glutes as much as, okay, what's happening within the the erector spinae. The erector spinae, they like to activate first. So typically when people do a deadlift and I'm watching them, I'm going to see that lower back arch up. So that lower back is going to arch up versus seeing that glute activation occurring there. So we need to let those glutes, which are a lot slower in activation, to lead us versus the erector spinae. So I'm going to get that activation with the glutes and let that bring myself up. It's just going to be a lot slower than we expect. For the deadlift that we're looking for here, obviously we're going to go into that position where we find that stretch in the hamstrings, but from here you're going to allow for that glute activation to occur. So, okay, the glutes are going to be firing up, taking my time, driving the hips forward, and then there's that activation that occurs. Versus for a lot of people, what happens for that lower back is we get this drive up first. So if you see yourself in the mirror and you're driving up in this position, that lower back is the thing that's going to be activating first versus, okay, my lower back, everything is really stacked well. I'm using the glutes. Okay, the glutes are bringing myself up. See how there's a difference there in the upper body where it's like I'm not driving, not arching, but it's actually just the glutes that are leading with that position. That's really what we want to focus for that deadlift. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, back to the question on weight.
Yes.
Does it matter how much you're lifting when you're doing deadlifts?
Are you?
I mean, I get it for squats, right? I understand like squats in terms of, your thigh muscles, and your especially like you're playing golf, like, because so much of a golf swing, you see the pros, they've got this lower body strength and they're able to just use that to move their body around. But deadlifts are almost the way that you teach it's almost like a finesse move. Like you're not, it's more about a slow process of getting this part of your body all working together.
Yeah.
And that's I'm just curious, like, cause I go to gyms cause I'm traveling a lot and I see people throwing around a lot of weight. And I gotta be honest with you. I mean, I'm looking at it going, maybe I should be lifting more weights. I know you do it too when you're in the gym.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out, like, with deadlifts, like is it something that you need to progressively be building weights, in order to build muscle mass, or is it something that's much more about building a consistent strength through your body so the weight doesn't matter nearly as much as the form?
Yeah. So step one always is going to be form first.
Mm-hmm.
So we always want to make sure we're again mastering the activation and mastering the form. And then if we're talking about the weight, typically the deadlifts is going to be one of your heavier or heaviest lifts.
Okay.
So weight definitely does matter. Just like with any exercise, we want to be working and challenging that muscle.
Okay.
And it's a matter of you have to really be paying attention with the glute and saying, is the glute giving out at this point in time? Because if you're starting to feel that lower back starting to activate because the glute can't move the weight, okay, now it's getting tired. It might not be the same burn that we're used to, especially with the quads. Like you get that burn sensation. But if you're ever seeing any heavy lifters and they know the mechanics that are elite level, you'll notice that they actually start not buckling, but shaking almost as they're coming up. Like you see that little shake, and that's the glutes just saying, it's like, hey, I can't go much more than that. Are their glutes burning at that point in time? Not whatsoever. Are they not firing anymore? Yeah, totally. They're just giving up at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've got a problem. I mean, my problem is that I only have so much weight in my little gym that I'm going to go up, and I'm just going to have to work with what I got because there's no other place to go. I got plenty of places to go with squats. Now, you talked about jumping earlier.
Yes.
And again, I go back to golf, right? So golf is the power of using your legs. And so I do jump squats, which I really like. I mean, if I'm going to do squats, they're fun because I'm moving. Yeah. And I sometimes combine them with a burpee. Sometimes I combine them with jumping jacks. Like I'll do it, 1, 2, 3, down 1, just moving, doing different things, keeping it fun. But I have started trying to like increase my vertical, whatever you call it, leap or whatever, jump. I kind of like it. Like it's nice. Like it and I'll do a jump shot. I'll go all the way down, almost sumo, right? And then I'll push myself off the floor as high as I can go. And I really like, it's almost aerobic, and it must, it's my own body weight. But I'm like it works. I'm fine. My breathing, like it's pushing me. But you said that's not a very good exercise. So I'm just curious, am I doing the wrong thing? Because it feels like that's a power exercise for improving your ability when 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 you hit the ball, like you need to move your hips back up again, and you're almost pushing yourself off the ground.
Yeah.
That's a power move that can help you get there, and you're using your own body weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great exercise. There is nothing wrong with that exercise whatsoever. I highly encourage you to do it because I know with the position of your legs, and I know that you're able to do that. When I'm saying, hey, it's not a great exercise, it's more for the mass market. If I've got, someone, let's say in their 65, they have not been to the gym for a long time, or they're just getting started, that is a lot of pressure with the knees. There is a lot of impact that goes on there. So that's something I would say for the right person, it is a great exercise. For yourself, I definitely would recommend it. But outside of that, it's just a matter of, it's depending on who I'm talking to when it comes with exercise for that.
Talk about deceleration and the benefits to stability, to being able to control, like an example is a habit that I get into every day. My bedroom's on the second floor when I'm home. And when I'm walking downstairs, but I walk down the stairs at home, and when I walk down the stair and I'm moving, like my momentum's moving forward, I decelerate and almost put it in slow motion, and I take every stair that way. And then when I get to the very bottom of the stair, I'll stand on one leg and try to do that blindfolded with my eyes closed for 30 seconds, and then I stand on the other leg. But that deceleration thing, I'm getting better and better and better at it. And I noticed the other day, I took a weekend where I went to my lake house and I walked up to a waterfall, hiked through and it's like really rugged trail and you're jumping off rocks. And I just noticed like how much more in control I was when I was I was able just to control the muscles going down. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Is that something real? And if it is real, what are some things other than walking down my stairs that you suggest with all of your muscles to be able to have that level of control?
Yeah, so there's two different phases when we're talking about movement. So if I was just doing bicep curls, we've got the concentric, and that's where the muscle is actually activating. So if we're doing, for example, that is like you going up the stairs. So that's going to be your concentric because you keep pushing up. The reverse of that is your eccentric, so coming down. So there's a few things that you're doing there. One is you're working on stabilization, which is absolutely fantastic. Number two is you're getting a lot of muscle activation by slowing down that eccentric phase. So you're actually getting the most muscle activation there, and that's really useful, especially if you're talking about, hey, if I'm walking down a hill, that's a perfect way of practicing that, is going down the stairs. And I love that you're doing it at a very slow, methodical pace because you're working on that balance as well. If you're talking about, well, how do we train for that? One of the things that we talk about in one of the things in the Sales Gravy course is talking about tempo. And so we talk about slowing down the movements, and that in itself was going to translate to all those different things. So when you're doing your squats, what I highly recommend for people, for anyone, for any goals, for your eccentric is really getting that 3 seconds down. So you count like 3 sales gravies down, and that's going to help with that, not only stabilization, but gets more muscle activation. More muscle activation means more lean muscle mass development. So that's why it's a huge win. If you're saying, hey, that's something I really, really want to work on, and I'm doing a lot of these hills, I'm doing a lot of mountain climbs, and there's going to be a lot of descents on the mountains, I would actually just increase the time that it takes you to go down into that squat. So for yourself, like you're talking about two different things that you really enjoy, I would combine those. So for you, I'd say, hey, Jeb, go 6 seconds down. So it's like, 6 sales gravies down, and then go as fast as you can up, especially with the resistance bands, because that is going to do amazing for your vertical, because we're building that speed, we're building that power.
Like it. Building muscle mass. If you're in your 20s, you said this last time, if you listen to the podcast, he said this last time, he goes, guys, we're talking about pretty much dudes, go into the gym and they work out really, really hard to build muscle mass so that they can attract a mate, right? Essentially, right? And I think probably women go in their 20s to stay in shape and look their best, bikini season's coming up or what have you, but there's a reason why you're in there, and it's typically some level of vanity.
Yeah.
And, but you still want to build muscle mass, and you came up here and you were talking some trash about how you're going to be Superman and some other things like that. So, and that stuck in my head, like Josh is going to be Superman. Well, I want to be Superman too. Yeah. I'm a little bit competitive. I'm going to be Superman, and I'm not transforming into Superman quite yet, but, and I look good. Like, I'm not going to lie. I mean, for for a man my age, I think I look pretty decent.
Sure.
But when I was in my 20s, I mean, there was a time when I went from, I think I weighed 150, and I went from 150 to 175, and it was all muscle mass. There was not an ounce of fat on me.
Yeah.
It's a lot harder, I think, as you grow older to get muscle mass on. But everybody I talk to, like, I want to gain weight, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. What's the key? If you want to not be a bodybuilder, maybe not be Trey over here, who is a beast, but if you want to put muscle mass on, layer it on, build it, and then hold on to it long term, which, by the way, is one of the big problems with these drugs like Wegovy and Mounjaro and Ozempic, is that you're losing 25% of your body weight, but you're also losing muscle mass along the way. Yeah. So if you don't manage what you're eating, and when you're doing that, it can get really bad for you. But when you're eating well on a regular basis and you're trying to put muscle mass on, and you're working out, and I'm like, I think I told you, I mean, I can bench press 225, and and I can do that 3 times, and that's, I'm not a bodybuilder, but for my age, I couldn't have done that 6 months ago, but I can do it. But I don't know that I'm actually building I know I've built some, like I can see the definition. I know this is a weird question, but how do you do it? Like, what's the key without becoming an obsessive, like, maniacal human being that is, no offense, Trey, drinking protein shakes, right, eating 18 hamburgers. Sometimes there's like, 8 dozen eggs in the refrigerator, and, and he ate them all in one meal. I've seen him do it. But look at him. He's a beast.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
I'm not going to be Trey, but I would like to put on more muscle mass, especially at my age, because it starts getting harder. Yeah. But if you're young, old, what have you, other than being Trey, you're amazing. How do you do this?
All right, so there's a few steps I think Trey can confirm on this as well. Losing weight is easier than gaining muscle mass. I'm sorry, everyone. It's just the case. I've done both, and I have trained both.
Squats are important. You have to do planks for 2 freaking minutes.
Oh, you don't have to. I'm just saying it's a good number.
Gaining muscle weight's really, really hard. So this painful journey you've been on to lose all this weight, that really sucked. But putting the muscle mass on is going to be worse. Thanks, Josh.
Oh no, you're already dialed in, and that's the part that's the most important. So let's talk about what you have to do to dial it in. So the first thing, there's a few things that we have to do before we even worry about going extra and beyond for supplements. First thing is we need to make sure the body recovers, because we do not build muscle mass in the gym. We fatigue the muscle, we challenge the muscle, and because of that challenge and the muscle is being challenged, it needs to adapt. So like, oh my goodness, this stimulus is going on. I gotta get stronger because this might happen again. So it's adapting to what we are asking of it. Well, that does not occur in the gym. It occurs when we're sleeping. So that's where the recovery happens. So if we're not getting the adequate amount of recovery sleep, there aren't the workers that are going to be building this castle. That's number one. So we want to be focusing on recovery, and I'm starting with that because for sales professionals, as we talked about last time, sleep is such an important key. So that's step one. Step two is nutrition. No surprise there, but what are we talking about for particular with nutrition? We want to be talking about protein, so your protein intake. Think about protein as the building blocks when we're talking about building the castle. There's the actual blocks that are going to be used to build that castle. And we're saying, well, how much protein? They recommend about 0.8 to 1 gram of protein for 1 pound of lean muscle or lean body weight that you have. So typically for yourself, I'd be recommending anywhere between 150 to 175 grams of protein. It's going to be a higher amount of protein. It is a higher amount of protein than we're having currently.
Because one study recommended, like I looked at it, recommended I have 180 grams of protein in order at my age, because you need more protein at my age to build lean muscle than you do at your age. Yeah. And I'm like, I started adding it up. I'm like, I can't eat that much protein.
It becomes majority, like 40 to 50% of your intake is going to become protein, which is it's just a matter of how you're going to get that.
But at the same time, nutritionists are saying that when you look at your plate, 75% of your plate needs to be green, and which I buy into. Like, it needs to be veggies. So now you got to eat more 50% of what you're eating is protein, and then you got to double up on that for your fiber and your veggies and your, like, that's a lot of and that's what he does. He eats all day long.
Yeah, and that's the matter of like you want to make sure you're getting the protein for that. Also, you need to have carbohydrates. So I know you have carbs, so that's good. I don't have to tell you about this, but a lot of people will want to cut carbs, and you
I
can't
actually
do
don't. I
that.
don't eat any. My carbs are fruit. I eat a lot of berries, a lot of
That's
strawberries.
healthy.
I eat very little, very few simple carbs. Like I don't eat bread. Every once in a while I do. If it's cheat night, I'll eat eat some bread. But I don't eat I don't eat pasta. I barely eat rice. But I eat a lot of fruit.
And that's good. So you're having like the good carbs
Hmm.
there in the sense of having carbs. And then finally is you actually have to do the exercises that are going to allow for that muscle development. So if we're saying, hey, I want to build lean muscle mass, first question is like, okay, where do we want to see it? And then it is, okay, what exercises are going to allow us to get the most activation within that muscle group so that we can get the stimuli for the body to recover using the protein that we had to develop and build that lean muscle mass. So that's really kind of a long-winded of saying that's how you build muscle. I feel like I'm a bearer of bad news here
I know.
today.
I mean, I don't know how I'm supposed to eat that much protein, and I love protein. Like I would eat protein all the time, but I don't know how to get it in. And but I know that you have to lift progressively more heavy weights. And I find that like with curls, like I got when I was doing I really went to a really long stretch where I was in places. And what just for the audience, I travel. Just to give you an idea, the first quarter of this year, so between January 1st and the end of March, I spent 75 nights in a hotel room.
Wow.
Okay, so because y'all never saw me, first time I've seen Trey in months. Um, I'm at the mercy of whatever gym is in either the hotel or whatever bands I bring with me, or I rarely am in a position where I can just go try to find an LA Fitness or something like that and go bop in. And I'm too daggum old. I don't have the energy to go chase those things down. So I work out with what I have, or I just walk. But I went on a run where I was really doing a lot of lifting. I just had good gyms, and I was up to just curls. Now again, I'm a small guy, and I'm 57 years old, but I was doing 45s. I was in one gym where I did 50s curls. And I'm not talking about one. I'm not talking about bad form. I'm talking about sitting down on a bench and curling, isolating the muscle, and that was great. Except for then I went through a whole string where I had really crappy gyms, and you go in and half the weights are missing, and you're working out with your resistance bands, which you can't put that much resistance, at least carrying it in your suitcase. So I go back to walking again, and I feel like I go back in the cycle where I'm back down to 25s and 35s, and then I work my way back up again. So I'm concerned about like on the muscles. Like I'm a guy, right? I want to be able to walk out in a t-shirt, and my wife goes, dude. Now she's never gonna do that, okay? But I want her to. I want to believe that she's gonna look at me and go, nice, nice biceps. The beach is that way. She'll never do. You don't know my wife. She'll never do that. Wouldn't even give me the pleasure of doing that. But I want to do that. And I'm like, I'm trying to build up at the same time, understanding that core muscle mass, the glutes, I don't know what you call the thigh muscles,
What?
the quads, the core,
Yeah.
the back, like those are the big muscle groups. And those are what really matter for stability as you get older, because you're more likely to die from falling down when you're 70 than you are from getting hit by a car. So I know that those are important, but I have those vanity muscles that I just want to crank up. Just don't give me more bad news. Maybe some good news. Like, what can an old guy like me do, like within the constraints of what I've got, to crank those up just a little bit, so that I'm gonna say just don't nobody get mad at me, but the only chick in my life that I care about, which is the one I've been married to for 30 years, goes, "You are hot for an old man." Like, how do I do that?
Absolutely. Well, the beautiful thing is you have everything in your arsenal that you need. So we'll just talk about good news. If we're talking about, let's just talk about resistance bands right now. Like I know with the resistance bands pack that we've got for you here, I can train.
Josh brought me a bunch of resistance bands from Toronto. And by the way, there's 25-pound weights that are in the blue studio. You ask Yuli, But in between, like if I'm doing breakout groups,
Yeah.
and so in between things, I'm in there doing curls with
That's
the 25
good.
pounds, and I'm doing squats with them too.
Yeah.
So I've used those 25 pounders. That's why they're in that studio over there.
That was good to hear. So I truly know I can design a program for Trey, and it actually would help develop more muscle mass for him using the resistance bands.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Is like I've done travels for myself where it's like, okay, I'm somewhere in 3 months and I don't have access to a gym. There's been times where I've been doing that, and so I would be using resistance bands. Well, how does that happen? First thing is if we want to be developing, let's say, the biceps, I highly recommend always sticking to, because you're a man who wants to get the most juice out of your time, go to more compound lifts. And when I say compound lifts, I'm actually saying more muscle than just a single one. So instead of just focusing on bicep curls, I would love for you to do a single arm back row with those bands attached to the door. Well, the reason being is we're getting a lot of activation within the back, which is good. It's going to shape us. So if we're talking about impressing the wife.
So I was doing those last weekend.
Perfect.
Single arm,
Yeah.
pulling back
Yeah.
like this,
Yeah.
and pulling all the way back, and then holding it, and then pulling it back. But that is activating.
That's going to be activating your bicep as well. So you're going to get that cut within the bicep as well as within the back. And I'm looking for 10 repetitions of you just like, okay, let's try to pull this door off of its hinges. And so you're going to get that activation. So that's for those arms. If we're talking about for the triceps, well, let's focus on that chest activation. So going into the chest press, or talking about the push-ups, I would do chest press because you've maximized the push-ups. And that's going to be the same thing where it's very heavy resistance. If we're talking about legs, you're saying, well, you can't really get a lot of resistance with the bands. Absolutely. Trey himself, like all 5 bands, isn't going to be a problem for him. But if I get him into a pistol squat position where he has to do one leg and he has to sit down onto just a chair, I always recommend if you're doing pistol squats, do it off of a chair. So it's just more for safety. And you have resistance bands on there, so you double up on those resistance bands and you're doing one leg at a time, I promise you that your legs are going to be so sore the next day. Okay. So those would be examples of, hey, if you want to get the most out of it, resistance bands are absolutely fantastic for doing that. I love what you're doing with the tempo, because that's really important as well. As fast as you can, we're going to talk about the back row. So I'm pulling back as fast as I can, because that gets the most muscle activation from there. And then I'm going super slow going forward. Again, I recommend that 3 seconds. I love that you had the pause as well, so that's really good. 3 seconds coming forward, and that's the best way I'd recommend.
So is there efficacy in, after you do that, then going and doing sets of curls?
You can do that. I'm more saying, like, yes, absolutely, to answer your question, for sure.
You could like
totally.
Like when I was at the gym on yesterday, I did barbell or dumbbell rows. Yeah. Then I did lat pull downs, and then I did curls. Yeah. And everything hurt. I mean, it was, but I didn't do really like big weights. But I did. Yeah. That's what I did. But the compound exercises, if you're doing those, you know that it's pulling here, but my brain says that's not really I didn't really do a curl. I just did this.
Well, you did a full curl by doing that. Same with the lat pull downs. Are we talking about that?
So
exercise?
If you're doing seated rows, even you're doing
biceps.
Okay, and I can you see if you're on a cable machine, you can do seated rows a lot of weight.
So if I was to like recommend exercises or saying, hey, I want to see that development, I'd be recommending doing a back row. I highly recommend lat pull downs. The reason being is if we want to see that very nice V, part of that, the upper part here, that's going to be within your lats. So we're shaping your body now. Those side planks for working on the obliques, fantastic. That goes into the small waist. We really upgrade that V with the lats, and then we want to be finishing up with the shoulders. If we're looking at individuals like, hey, he looks pretty fit. If you watch your eye line, you actually are looking at comparing his shoulders, which is a big portion of himself, and then tapering down into the waist. And that's how we focus on, that size and the fitness.
A couple more things before we go. Yeah. One of the things is lat pull downs with the bands. Mm-hmm. And most places I go either don't have a pull-up bar, or they don't have a lat pull-down machine. Yeah. And so my only option is hook the bands to a door and then do the lat pull downs. You did one with us where you had it hooked to the door and you were leaning forward and you were doing pull downs this way. I don't know why, but it just doesn't feel to me like that's a lat pull down, and maybe it's all in my head. So I find myself more often getting into the very top of the door and I sit down, like I just cross my legs and I pull down this way, and it feels more like a lat pull down. But there's some places where I have to do it your way. and maybe I'm doing it wrong, but I just want to check with you. If you're leaning forward and you're coming back this way, that's a lat pull down.
That is going to be a lat pull down. You really want to make sure that we've got alignment. So my elbow, I want to make sure that elbow is in line with the body, and I'm keeping this hand back so it's in line with the shoulder, and it's going to the same angle as the resistance band. I do have a lot of clients that do have issues with getting that proper form. So the cheat to that, as long as you have a mat or a towel or something so that your face isn't just in the floor of a hotel, either room or the gym, right? What I recommend a lot of my clients do is they actually lay down. So we have the attachment, the lower hinge of the door. People, if you're using resistance bands,
No, not yet. I'm going to tell them we're
Okay.
coming back to this.
All right, sounds good.
We're coming back to this.
So we'll get back to that. But we're going to be going to the lower hinge, and I actually want you to lie down on the ground, and that forces you to go into the alignment because you can't come
Are
forward.
you going to lay down on your back or lay down on your stomach?
So if you're lying down on your stomach, which I recommend, I'll lie down on your stomach, and so that's going to be, that straight arms. If you're going to be going into your back, it's very hard to go into that position. So I actually go into a neutral grip. So I'm going to be laying on my back, let's say that, and then I'm driving down, and I'm really focusing on that lat activation. I'm tucking those elbows. So that's what I'd be recommending if I'm doing it on the floor.
I know that the maids sometimes come into the hotel rooms and I've got like 8 towels spread out because I got this thing about floors.
I agree.
Okay, now we're going to do a public service announcement for band safety. I'm going to tell you my story first, and then Josh is going to tell you when you're using resistance bands, this is important. So I got these resistance bands that he brings down. I've got my little gym at home. I got the resistance band set up, and I'm doing rows, and I've got the door kind of open, so I got a fan blowing, so a little air in there. And my wife is in the bathroom. I can see her blow drying her hair, and I'm doing this, and all of a sudden the thing comes loose. And when it comes out of the door. So the door wasn't all the way shut, so there was a gap. And I pulled hard enough that I actually pulled the little band holder, the piece of what do you call it, foam or whatever. I pulled it through, and it hit me so hard it went thump, and I went oh. And it hurt so bad. I had this massive bruise. And the very first thing I did was look around to make sure that nobody saw it. Like I make sure my wife didn't walk through because it was such a stupid move. So don't be me. Now tell them exactly what you need to do with bands so you don't end up killing yourself.
Well, and this is why we have a module in the course where it's like, hey, band safety, and this is what you want to do. So you just want to make sure you're using the hinge side, so the door that has the hinges is the hinge side. And the reason for that, when the door opens, for whatever reason, that stopper that we have that holds on to the resistance isn't going to go through, so the door technically can be open and everyone's going to be
Fortunately,
just fine.
I wasn't that stupid. Like I understood that part. Like I get that, but you need to close the door.
You do need to very much close the door. That's the reason why there's a card that says stop for anybody as well.
I didn't read that. Okay. I got one more question for you. Sure. So you came here a few months ago, shot some videos. We've been getting those videos up, and your life has gone on. And weird question, but 3 things that you've learned since we were together last that are cool, new, interesting, different, have changed your life, helped your life, made you better, made you worse, taught you a lesson.
Absolutely. So there's been definitely a few lessons for sure. When I talked about sleep, I didn't realize how important sleep really is. And so when I'm working with more sales professionals now every single day, that is the first thing that we'll focus on. And we're not spending 2 weeks on it. It's just a matter of not realizing that people that come and hire us at Online Exercise Coaching, they are 110% maxed out in their own capacity. They've got high stress at work because they're in a sales position, which is very, very demanding. They've got high stress at home. There's other demands that are going on outside of that. And then they're trying to add this additional stressor, additional headspace into fitness and their health. And that's really, really difficult. So I'm realizing for anyone who's starting out, it's really important to focus on that sleep aspect. And then again, we've talked about this as well, it's that consistency of bedtime. Is like I've just seen that, and it's been reinforced now that consistency of bedtime is so important. The most important alarm is not when we wake up. The most important alarm is actually alarm going off 30 minutes before bed, reminding you, is like, hey, time to go into bed, time to start unwinding. so that you can go to bed, so the recovery. And I found that there is the biggest bang for buck. If you're talking about dollars and cents, like legitimately making more money, the people that have that consistency of bedtime can have more sales calls, which lead to more dollars. They are better within their prospecting, which leads to more dollars. They have better conversations with those prospects that they currently have, which means more dollars. So they're making more money because of this one focus. So if you're not doing this, I really want you to focus on, hey, you're flushing money down the drain, because that's going to be one thing that's like, we're risk averse. So we're risking money now by not doing this.
Yep. And you'll negotiate better and you'll close better.
And you'll close better.
Better emotional control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So that's one of the biggest takeaways that I have. And then outside of that is really just making sure that we're focusing on setting the daily goal. Daily goal is really important. It's like, okay, what is the one thing that I really want to accomplish? And setting just the one thing. Everything else is a bonus, and you're going to feel great because you hit the one goal as soon as you can during the day, and then everything else is a bonus. So it's such a winning sensation. I would much rather celebrate 365 small wins on a yearly basis, like hitting my goals and really re-solidify my identity, versus waiting for that one day where the scale's going to say that one number and then I can celebrate, which no one's really paying attention anyways. So that's the reason why I find that one so important. Those are the two things I would say has really been solidified for me.
And one thing personally that you've learned that's helped you?
One thing personally for me, are you talking about like my own fitness level?
Something that you've learned along the way that just changed your outlook on something. I'm just interested in you.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I'm really getting into a lot more Stoic philosophy. I find that it helps. And if there's an educator in Stoicism that is also a sales coach, man, that would be an amazing combination. But I am really focusing on the things that I can control and getting value from things that are that I have full control over. So instead of me saying like, oh, wow, that sales gravy thing, we're getting a lot of traction there. That's absolutely amazing. I'm going to be celebrating that. I don't have control if this course does absolutely amazing. Hopefully it does. Hopefully it changes some lives. That would be amazing. But I'm just going to be focusing on how much work did I put into this? Was this the most work that I can do? And then just giving myself permission to pat myself on the back and saying, good job. Regardless of what happens here, fantastic work.
Very good. That's a good lesson. It's a good way to end. There are three things you can control. You can control your actions, your reactions, and your mindset. And that is it in sales. If you want to get more Josh and learn more of his fitness tips, go to Sales Gravy University. Go to learn.salesgravy.com. That's learn.salesgravy.com. And if you have never taken a course on Sales Gravy University before, just use the code FREECOURSE. You can take any course. There are no restrictions. Go take any course. I hope you'll go check out one of Josh's courses because they are amazing. And we'll see you next time on the Sales Gravy Podcast. Hey, I'm doing a happy dance because you watched this video. Make sure that you click like and subscribe so that you never miss one of our amazing sales training videos.